have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more...
Translation: I find this exchange ridiculous, unintelligent, and extraordinarily stupid that you're missing the point. That's what he wanted to say. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to see this. JD Vance absolutely obliterates this host, this ABC News host. It's absolutely insane. ABC News actually puts up this full clip, and they say Trump falsehood about Aurora, Colorado have some element of truth. That is wild. That's an attempt not to let you know the bloodbath that this interview ended up being. When the fact checker gets told, "Hey, you're out of touch," it is, and most viewers watching are thinking this woman is completely out of touch. Part of the reason that I got into cryptocurrency, which is what my channel typically is all about, is because I wanted average individuals to be able to opt out of a bureaucracy that does not care about them financially. I wanted them to financially be able to take control of their finances and not worry about government interference as much as possible. I wanted them to be able to make independent decisions that would benefit them and wouldn't ultimately benefit, only those in power. And yet, if you take a look at what's happening in American politics right now, it doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right. If you're objective, there are things that should be causing concern. And really, the world's paying attention to American politics. There's something going on right now. I was having a conversation with some of my European friends, and it was amazing to me what they were concerned about. And Americans aren't even talking about it. There is something happening right now in the American presidential election cycle that is unprecedented, has never happened in the history of America before. 20 years ago, every American would have told you that it was probably impossible and it should not happen in American politics. Yet it's happening right now. Other people outside of the U.S., some Europeans that I've been talking to, brought it up. They're aware of it. It concerns them. But Americans, by and large, are not even talking about it and don't even know it's a problem. I'm going to show you that as well in this clip. First, let's watch JD Vance obliterate this lady. And then, when she attempts to smugly fact check him. And then I'm going to talk about what's going on in American politics. And at the end of the video, I'm going to explain to you how this led me ultimately into cryptocurrency several years ago. These fundamental things, which, by the way, were not out. It was not so public back then. You had to sort of read between the lines. Now this stuff is kind of public and in your face, so to speak. Let's go ahead. Watch this.
But we played some other comments about migrants, including in Aurora, in Colorado, where Trump said the city had been invaded and conquered by Venezuelan gangs. The Republican mayor of the city said flatly the city and state have not been taken over or invaded or occupied by migrant gangs. So do you support Donald Trump making those claims that the Republican mayor says were grossly exaggerated and have hurt the city's identity and sense of safety? I understand what you're saying, that some people left behind, but he's making these statements that the mayor is flat out disputing.
Well, Martha, you just said the mayor said they were exaggerated.
Grossly exaggerated.
That means that there's got to be some... That means there's got to be some element of truth here. And of course, President Trump was actually in Aurora, Colorado, talking to people on the ground. And what we're hearing, of course, Martha, is that people are terrified by what has happened with some of these Venezuelan gangs.
Senator Vance, I'm going to stop you because I know exactly what happened. Martha. I'm going to stop you.
Here she goes. She's going to fact check him. I'm going to stop you because what you're saying is wrong. How smug is this? But listen to what she says. This is so wild.
The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have...
That's mind-numbing. Think about this. Somehow this host says this like it's okay. Like it's okay in America that a few apartment complexes, a handful, more than one, mind you. One is crazy in America. Like this is not supposed to happen in America at all, in anywhere, in any town, in any city. Like get them the hell out of there. Where's law enforcement? That should not happen, that illegal migrants of any kind push Americans out of an apartment complex. And somehow That's okay because Donald Trump's exaggerating, which, by the way, I don't think Donald Trump should exaggerate. He speaks in hyperbole. It sounds very ignorant. That's just neither here nor there. One thing I will say for JD Vance is he's very articulate, at least. But it's interesting to see him because he's normally well composed. And he's like, do you hear yourself? Like, do you hear the first time I saw this, before he even spoke up, I thought, wait a minute, are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me? Like you're giving it a pass that, oh, Donald Trump spoke in hyperbole. He exaggerated. But the mayor, the Republican mayor, they always say that, which obviously that Republican mayor and Donald Trump are at odds, but the Republican mayor says it's grossly exaggerated. He didn't say it's a lie. He didn't say it didn't happen. He's like, no, it happened. He just exaggerated it. Okay, it happened is the real problem.
Have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more...
I find this exchange, translation, I find this exchange ridiculous, unintelligent, and extraordinarily stupid that you're missing the point. That's what he wanted to say.
Focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again. And unfortunately...
By the way, these were illegal violent gangs, which makes it even worse.
When you let people in by the millions, most of whom are unvetted, most of whom you don't know who they really are, you're going to have problems like this. Kamala Harris, 94 executive orders that undid Donald Trump's successful border policies. We knew this stuff would happen. They bragged about opening the border, and now we have the consequences, and we're living with it. We can do so much better, but frankly, we're not going to do better, Martha, unless Donald Trump calls this stuff out. I'm glad that he did.
Okay, let's just end that with they did not invade or take over the city, as Donald Trump said.
This is wild. She's sitting here like, let's just end it right there. It's clear. Aurora is not getting taken over. At no point in time does she acknowledge that what JD Vance is saying, and the way he was saying was far more substantive. Can I say that right? It had a lot more substance to it. What he was saying was talking about the real problem that's actually happening. She doesn't even acknowledge that. Talk about being useless as a media pundit. That in America, the media originally was supposed to be speaking for the people, like fair and balanced and honest and getting to the truth. And obviously this is political theater at this point. I mean, it's literal. Like I can't even believe I'm saying this. We're literally watching orchestrated propaganda right in front of us, which is wild. Now, here's what's crazy. I had some European friends recently, probably about a month or so ago, and they were like, we can't believe what's going on in your presidential election. And I said, what are you talking about? They were like, well, we just can't believe everything that's going on with the candidates. Like, we never thought that someone could be appointed president or even presidential candidate in America. And I thought I knew what they were getting at, but I didn't think they were that sharp, because a lot of Americans don't understand the political process in America, right? So let me show you what they're talking about, because you may be thinking, what do you mean someone's getting appointed? Let me show you this for a moment. So obviously in America, what's supposed to happen is candidates come forward, they register with the Federal Election Commission. They're like, hey, I'm going to run for president. Essentially, anybody can do that. They announce their intentions to run and primary, and there's debates for the primaries. This is basically like right now when Joe Biden's currently the president. If during the primaries he would have had some sort of Democrat challenger, it would have been Joe Biden plus a Democrat challenger, and then ultimately the Democrat side of the voters would have voted for who they want to represent them. Now, Joe Biden did run unopposed at this previous cycle, and typically the incumbent is unopposed most often. But if that would have happened, then they would have, elected Joe Biden, so to speak, which by default he was elected because there was no one else. And then on the Republican side, the Republicans had they had Trump, they had Nikki Haley, they had DeSantis, all those people, right? And then the Republicans voted, okay, we want Trump to represent us. Good, bad, or difference. He won the primary. So the primary vote happens. Ultimately, what happens is the candidates are voted on, and then they become the candidates of their party, whether it's the Republican Party or Democrat Party, and then they go on to the general election in which all the voters vote for either the Republican or the Democrat. Typically, is how it works. But what was concerning my European friends, they're like, but the Democrats never had a primary, or they did have a primary. Joe Biden was selected. Now all of a sudden he's unfit to be the candidate, and he was just removed, and somebody else was appointed. Kamala Harris has never ever been voted on. And I agree with them. This is crazy, and I don't think enough people talk about this. Kamala Harris was never voted on in a primary. And I think this shows some level of strange, I don't know, manipulation, I guess is a word, corruption. Like, we don't even know what's going on with Joe Biden right now. He's the president of the United States, and he rarely is seen or talked about at all in the media. No press conferences, no public appearances that are known about or discussed at all publicly. Where is the guy at? What's going on? Who knows? But what's interesting is he was going to be the candidate. We were told 2-3 months before the debate with Donald Trump that he was a candidate. Democrats everywhere in the Democrat Party. I'm not trying to demonize Democrats. I'm saying the Democrat Party as a whole, all the talking heads, all the pundits, all the aides, everybody was like, yep, he's going to be the candidate. He's going to be the candidate. Therefore, no one ran against him. He was going to run. And looking back on it, I almost wonder if the powers that be wanted Kamala Harris for whatever reason. I think it's because it doesn't matter what I think. I think she's going to do whatever someone tells her to do ultimately. I don't think she's actually in charge. Personal opinion, just like I don't think Joe Biden's in charge. And whoever isn't, meaning I think that it's the machine that's making the decisions ultimately. Now, I don't know who or what, but Joe Biden is not in charge. And quite honestly, presidents have not nearly as much power as people think. I mean, they only know based on what they're told. And, when someone gives you information, they can be biased in how they give you that information to affect how you make decisions, etc. But it's clear right now that Joe Biden is not a strong commander in chief running America day to day. Like, I think most people, if they're honest with themselves, even if you're somewhat objective, you have to admit that. And then you have Kamala Harris. Suddenly, she gets appointed. All of a sudden, we find out that, and some people just assume, oh, she's a vice president. Well, the vice president doesn't suddenly become the next president. They have to have a primary. What should have happened, in my understanding, is there should have been some sort of essential, like an emergency election, some sort of runoff should have occurred, or whatever. Something should have occurred. And by the way, I don't think if that would have happened that Kamala Harris would have ran unopposed. I think there were people that would have opposed her if there was some sort of a primary runoff, a special election of sorts. That's what probably should have happened, I believe. And it would have been historic, but at least somebody would have voted for her. Today, she's representing the Democratic Party, and not one Democrat voter actually voted for Kamala Harris to be their candidate. And that's a bit nerve-wracking. That's a little bit scary. And who knows who's going to be president, by the way, ultimately. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out in the U.S. But here's the thing. The thing about all this that bugs me is I did a video years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, where there was shenanigans going on at the RNC for the Republicans and the DNC. And people don't like to hear this because people want to identify as either I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, and I can't be objective about my own party. And I think that's scary because I think you're just supporting the greater machine, and you're not even supporting it with any intellectual honesty because you're too busy defending your side of the political aisle. Or what they do is they make it all about our identity. Like we are Republicans, so our team has to win, or we are Democrats, so our team has to win. And even though our team is not perfect, it's better than the other guy, so we always just vote for our team. And I think this is part of the flaw of American politics as a whole, and ultimately it just feeds the machine. I believe that ultimately the bureaucracy wins until the bureaucracy ultimately crumbles. And I mean, historically, all bureaucracies eventually crumble over a multi-hundred-year cycle or whatever. All bureaucracies ultimately crumble. So what drove me to cryptocurrency is being able to basically not have to give citizens a chance to opt out of a bureaucratic financial system as much as possible. And what's so incredible about cryptocurrency, like people don't understand. I just had a conversation when I was in the Dominican Republic last week about cryptocurrency. And I had an entrepreneur sitting there, and he's an entrepreneur who has multiple businesses. And if you have multiple businesses, you end up getting sued at some point or another by 2 or 3 people here or there. And he's never lost a lawsuit, but he's been stressed out, he's been concerned and sort of thing. And he says, wait a minute, this is what got him. He says, wait a minute. So you mean if I owned my assets in Bitcoin, then nobody could garnish my wages. No one could garnish bank accounts because that's what can happen if you lose a lawsuit. And the problem with that is it affects payroll and it affects your operating expenses and it doesn't just affect you and your business, it affects your employees. And thankfully he's never had to deal with that, but he knows people that have. And I said, you're exactly right. If you hold Bitcoin in a cold wallet, meaning you hold it in your possession, or Ethereum or any altcoin, the government has to compel you, meaning they can threaten you with lawsuits, they can threaten you with jail, they can threaten you, with all sorts of bad things that could cause you to turn your money over. But you have to be willing to turn your money over. They can't go to your bank account. And at the same time, as we were sitting there, another gentleman spoke up. He said, what's crazy? He said, I have a construction company. He said, listen to this. Listen to this. He said, I have a construction company in Pennsylvania, and we do very well today. He said, but I was formerly Amish, and I was very dumb when it come to managing my money. He said, that was just my fault. And I'm running a business, and I'm managing money poorly. He said, and I got behind on taxes. And he goes, I did not understand the consequences of getting behind on taxes as a new entrepreneur, what it would be like. He said, all of a sudden, they started garnishing my bank account. And I'm already struggling to make money, to make payroll, to get ahead. Now they're garnishing my bank account. He said my banker would call me and he would say, hey, let me know when you have checks coming in. I can move money around, make certain your vendors get paid, whatever, make sure your bills get paid before the money actually hits your account. And I don't know exactly how that worked or even if that's possible, but he said that banker could have gotten a lot of trouble for that. But he really bailed me out during that tight time until I was able to get caught up with the IRS. And the whole point of this is in the current bureaucratic system, the system serves the bureaucracy. The system serves the system, and it serves the creators of the system. This has been a bit of a rant. It's been a longer video. And I know typically on my channel, I'm talking about cryptocurrency. Typically, look, I got a notification from Derive. I'm typically talking about selling options on Derive. That's what my last video was about. That's probably what my next video will be about. But ladies and gentlemen, we have to be responsible for our own education, our own learning, and ultimately our own finances. And I believe cryptocurrency allows us to do that. If you appreciate this type of content, do me a favor and smash that like button. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on what's going on in American politics. I'd love to hear it down below. Let's have a conversation down there. This is Crypto Wealth. I'm out.